In conversation with Andrew Jordan Nance. Andrew Jordan Nance has been an educator since 1990. He is the author of five published books: The Barefoot King, Dolly Dives Deep, The Lion in Me, Mindful Heart in the Classroom, and the bestseller Puppy Mind. He is a founder and lead trainer of Mindful Art San Francisco, a program of the San Francisco Education Fund that provides volunteer mindfulness educator to teach in essay public schools. Since 2018, he has weekly taught over 300 pre through fifth graders the principles of mindfulness. On KTVU SF Love Learning, Mr. Nas was a featured mindfulness teacher, and his adapted five-episode series of Puppy Mind premiered on KTVU and is distributed to schools districts around the country. For almost 30 years, he taught performing arts to students from diverse backgrounds, and for almost 20 years, he was a conservatory director at San Francisco New Conservatory Theater Center. Mr. Nance is also an award-winning actor and director. He is on the board of directors of several educational and nonprofit organizations, including Mindful Life Project in Richmond, California, and San Francisco New Conservatory Theater Center. Is a recipient of the Point of Light Award, a national honor recognizing his volunteer effort to bring mindfulness to youth. And on today's episode of Auto Interview, it's my utmost pleasure, joy, and excitement to have on the show today Andrew Nance. How are you doing, Andrew?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm doing very fine. I need to say you have such a beautiful, awesome, and lovely bio. Quite great one for a CV update.
Thank you. Thank you. It's been a fun road to be on.
Absolutely, yeah. So, Andrew, I want to first say that I'm impressed by your body of children's literature works and also quite impressed by the number of works you've done according to your bio. And I would actually like us to start today's conversation with your book titled Puppy Mind. Could you tell us about what inspired you to write Puppy Mind?
Right. Well, about 12 years ago, I was working in the schools and I was teaching mindfulness, and I looked for books in bookstores about mindfulness for kids, and I just didn't find anything. I found one that I thought would be okay, but I brought it into the kids, and you could just see their faces just kind of drain of oxygen, and they just were not interested in the book. So I thought, well, gosh, I've written plays before.
Mm.
Let me try writing a children's book. So I went home and I actually had a bunch of ideas in my head. So I think I wrote three or four that particular day, the rough
Wow.
draft one. And then I brought in Puppy Mind to the class and I read it. And the teacher really liked it. She came up to me afterwards and said, this is really good. You should maybe talk to a publisher. And
Wow.
so I reached out to a publisher, and they were interested, and they gave me a two-book deal. So I was able to publish two books actually three books with them eventually.
Wow.
And I'll show you a cover, if I don't know if people are
The cover you've
listening
got in
or
there.
viewing. Yeah, so this is Puppy Mind, and it's all about a little boy whose mind wanders like a puppy, and
Oh,
it's his
wow.
job to get it to heal to the present or stay in the present,
Oh,
one kind breath at a time. So
wow.
it's the super sweet book, and actually, it's kind of cool. The illustrator is named Jim Dirk, and he did a lot of the illustrations for Clifford the Big Red Dog or Thomas the Tank Engine, which you may or may not have heard of, but they're very popular in the United States and in England. So, so I
Wow.
was really happy to find
That sounds like a lot, really. I love your description of Puppy Mind, the making of
good.
it. I get inspired, the cover design, and the illustration as well. Sounds quite beautiful to me. Thank you so much for sharing.
You're welcome. Yeah, there's a concept in Buddhism called monkey mind. And, in the United States, we don't have monkeys, at least, in the forests.
We have a
So
lot here.
you don't
If
have
you're
them there
interested, we
either.
have a lot here. We can
I
I
was going to
can
say, yeah.
transport some over to you if you're interested.
Okay. Okay. Um, but in the States and in England, and in Australia, a lot of English-speaking countries,
Mm,
the concept of a monkey mind is very foreign, and so I wanted to create something that made more sense, because a lot many families in the United States, I don't know what the number is, but have dogs in their lives, if not in their homes, maybe a neighbor
yeah,
or a relative has a puppy. And so it's really, we get it that puppies are really hard to train, and we just have to keep practicing over and over, and it
yeah.
feels like nothing's changing. But eventually, we can train the puppy, and we can train our minds from wandering off so easily, and to
Mm,
kind of do our bidding with as much kindness as possible. So it's a nice, easy way to have a conversation with a kid. Like you could say, "Oh, look what your puppy mind's doing when you're, twirling around on the floor, or you're spacing out outside the window,
yeah.
thinking about, your birthday party, or your soccer game that's coming up, or whatever it might be."
That's an amazing one. That's really an amazing one. Thank you so much for sharing. And also, you have another title in the name of The Lion in Me. And I need to say, I
Yes.
love that title. And I'm quite curious how you even, give names to these books. But then, for the sake of readers who haven't read the book yet, and without
Right.
giving much information away, could we have a sneak of what we'd expect picking up The Lion in Me?
So The Lion in Me is about a little boy who gets angry a lot,
Wow.
and he doesn't know how to handle this big emotion called anger. And so the lion represents anger. And I'll show you a couple of page or my face. This is actually um, I'll show you. This is him starting to turn into a lion right here. And you
Wow.
can see he doesn't get
Oh,
that scary. It's not that scary yet, but you can see he dropped his lunch on the floor, and that emotion is starting to take over his body. And then the lion gets a little bigger. And then you can see it's very cartoony, like a comic book. He starts turning into a lion. So it's a nice representation for kids, because I kind of think a lot of us kind of feel that way, that we become very animal like when anger shows up, and we can't think clearly.
yeah.
Our face gets hot, we feel a little bigger, which is why we want to get angry,
Mm.
is to feel like we're kind of invincible in that moment. And our hearts start beating fast, but our smarts go down.
Gosh.
Like, we're never at our best when we're furious, right? It's
Yeah.
kind of feels liberating, like we've sort of broken out of something, but usually we regret what we've done in fury.
Yeah. Oh,
Um,
wow.
and so what I love about this book is it teaches the boy and the reader how to notice the signals that are showing up in our bodies when anger starts to show up.
Mm,
So, that warmth I was talking about, the shoulders going up, the fists clenching. And if
mm,
we can kind of check ourselves when these things are happening,
yeah.
we can kind of work with it a little bit more skillfully, so we can still be angry. I'm not against anger. It's a human emotion. It's part of us.
Absolutely.
But we want to not let it run the show. We want to say, you know what, that really angered me. That really pissed me off. Um, and I'm going to do this about it. I'm going to walk away. I'm going to say no. I'm going to protect myself from a bully. Um, but I'm going to try to do my best to be my best.
I love the fact that you mentioned. I mean, first of all, I need to commend your answers to these questions, and your book sounds to be quite amazing and quite interesting to me. I like the fact that you mentioned that we regret what we've done in Fury. I was taking some notes while you were speaking. I find
Oh,
it to be
good.
quite amazing and quite great. I would like you to show the book again to the camera, the
Sure.
lion aspect. I wanted to make an illustration about it. Yeah, the inside
Yeah.
actually,
The
what
insight.
you showed
Okay.
initially.
Absolutely.
Some point I love in there that I want the foxed picture. Yeah, the other
This one?
one, the back.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah,
the
the first
one.
picture. Was it this one or the
Yeah,
next one?
from this one,
That
you can tell. I love the way the lion was more like a reflection, something that looks
Yeah,
like a shadow,
that's right.
reflection of the boy's mood in
That's
there.
right.
And in here,
That's
it wasn't so obvious. But when you turn over to the next page, please do that. Flip over to the
yes,
next page. You can see it's getting much obvious and quite
that's right.
suspicious this time around. And it's
Yep.
gradually turning to a lion in him. I love the way that picture is explaining in a shadow manner the reflection of his mood. And over the
Thank
third page, he has turned drastically into a lion.
Exactly. And that's how it feels sometimes, right? We just don't even feel like ourselves. And
Absolutely.
the next morning you're like, I am so sorry. I was so
Yeah, I shouldn't have said that. I shouldn't have done
tired.
that.
Exactly. And we've all been there. And so if we can just kind of catch ourselves a little bit, and it's usually with the breath. The
Yeah.
breath is very underrated as a super tool to steer our emotions and
Mhm.
steer our lives and steer our behaviors, steer our thoughts. That's the thing is if we find ourselves worried, caught up in worry, if we take some deep breaths,
Mm,
we will be just a little bit less. If we
absolutely.
find ourselves getting, sad or depressed, and
Mm,
we take some deep breaths and give ourselves maybe even a hug, we feel that emotion just a little bit less.
yeah.
Um, and we realize we can handle it. I think
Absolutely.
so often we were told growing up to stop feeling that way, you
Mm,
know? Stop being so sad. Stop being frustrated that you can't go to the park or you can't play with that toy.
yeah.
Rather than I get it. It's a big deal. I remember that when I was a kid that I couldn't play with a toy all the time. And just to really get curious about a child's emotional state allows them to feel seen and
Mm,
loved, that they're not crazy for wanting a ball more than anything else in the world, you know?
absolutely.
And often I hear it all the time is this a big deal or a little deal?
Mm,
And to a 4-year-old or a 5-year-old, it's a big deal. They
yeah.
want that red ball with the polka dots, or whatever
Mm,
it is.
yeah, I
And
love
and
it.
yeah. Oh, I was just going to say, and so we grow up not wanting to look at our emotions either.
Mm,
And so we're constantly saying, oh, I'm being ridiculous, or gosh, I don't even know what to do with all this emotion that's surging through my body. So
mm,
I'm just going to hold on to it because I don't know what to do. And I'm not going to talk to anyone because someone's going to say, well, at least you have this, or at least you have that, or, oh, well, he's a jerk, or they're a jerk, or you don't like that job anyway, or whatever it is. Often people get uncomfortable dealing with big emotions,
yeah.
adults and kids. So we just don't have the history or the language to kind of move through big emotions with
Mm,
kindness, care. Because if we do give ourselves the grace to be sad or be angry, it kind of moves through us almost like a cloud. It
yeah.
just kind of goes away. And it's counterintuitive, but it really does help to
Absolutely.
say, yeah, this sucks. This is terrible, or this is wonderful. Holding on to happiness is sometimes hard for us as
Mm.
humans.
I love the fact that you mentioned that it's counterintuitive. That's very true. Quite beautiful,
Hmm.
really. I enjoy your answers to this question. Quite
Oh,
educative,
good.
quite fun, quite
Yeah.
awesome, and well done. Yeah, really. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
I'd also like to ask you, Andrew, what sort of message do you intend to pass to kids with your different titles? I know we've been able to mention from the other previous conversation, we've been able to mention a bit about what, but I'd still like to ask you, What sort of message do you tend to pass to kids with your different titles? And what impact do you want your work to have in the life of those who read
Right.
it? Yeah.
Yeah. I think I want the reader, and adults included,
Yeah.
to go inward first, before doing anything. Stop. There's a great acronym called STOP, STOP, and it's the first one is S, stop your body. So just stop whatever you're doing. And then T, take a breath. So get that oxygen to the brain because that's the only way it's going to work well. And
Mm.
then O, observe the feelings, whatever that is. And then P, peacefully proceed. So really just kind of no matter what's going on, do it with skill and care. So STOP is what I think is the
Wow.
real hope for kids, is to look inward so they can make their smartest choices. And I actually, my definition of mindfulness is um, to use our breath to check in with our mind and our bodies to make our smartest choice. Um, and that I think is really the key to it all is breath, check in, and then our smartest choice. So
Wow.
yeah. So I think that's just to distill it down, I
Yeah.
think that to just go inward first,
Yeah.
do a little inventory, and then proceed with peace.
Absolutely. That's quite amazing too. Thank you for sharing.
You're
Thank you.
welcome.
Thanks a lot. Yeah. Now, could you tell us a bit also about the making of the Barefoot King, a story
Ah,
about feeling frustrated? That's
right.
one of your titles, I think.
Thank you. So this is the Barefoot King,
Wow.
and isn't it pretty? It's a really beautiful picture book. Kind of feels like it is a folk tale, and I'll
Oh,
show you
wow.
some. You can just see how pretty
Oh,
and
wow.
different it is.
This is
Yeah,
amazing. And
isn't that
I love the way those texts are written. It's something that looks like a blanket covering someone in there.
exactly? That's the
Concept you've
king.
got in there, really.
Right, that's the king's blanket, and
Mm.
he's just stubbed his toe on a rock, and he decides to try to change the world because of this one little stone that he stubbed his toe on.
Wow.
And eventually, he learns that it's the world doesn't need changing necessarily, um, but the his mind and how he perceives the world needs changing. Um, and I'll give you a little clue: is he basically tells his ministers, "All
Yeah.
right, I stubbed my toe on a rock yesterday while walking, and I never want that to happen again. And in fact, I never want anyone to feel pain ever again.
Mm.
So what I decided we're going to do is we're going to cover the entire land in leather." So no rocks will ever be, in your way ever again. No obstacles
Wow.
will ever be in your way ever again. And so they're like, okay. So they cover the land with leather. And you can
Wow.
imagine that things don't go so well. um, it's hot when the sun's out, it's
Wow.
slippery when it's rainy, and the
Wow.
cows aren't happy. And so he has to make some different choices, and I won't tell you what the end is, but it's a very simple choice, but
Yeah.
it's much smarter. It's much smarter than covering the whole land in leather.
I love your
So
attempt at keeping it spoiler free. Nice one. Thank you.
I'll tell you offline. I'll tell you offline.
Nice snippet
um,
you've got in there. Thank you.
right,
I would
right,
also like to ask you, how did you come to Temp Street writing in the genres of children's literature? What piqued your
right.
interest in this genre? I'm curious.
It really was out of need. There just wasn't a lot of books out there. So I just said, you know what? Why not me? I've never thought about being an author ever.
Wow.
Uh, but it just kind of all fell into place. I think if we're in the right place, things start happening. One, we have
Absolutely.
we have a ton of energy. I don't know if you've ever been in that situation where you're like, of course, I can do all those things,
Yeah.
maybe getting your podcast together. You stay up later than you thought you could to get something accomplished,
Yeah.
and you brave enough to reach out to certain people
Yeah.
to get things accomplished. I reached out to two publishers, and they said yes, and yeah, so it just sort of evolved, and then and then I thought, okay, well, I guess I'm good at this, so I'm going to just keep writing, and so I have lots of manuscripts still, in my computer ready to go.
Wow.
But you can't get every yes. You can't always get a yes, but you just have to keep trying.
Hmm. Oh, wow. That's a beautiful one you've gotten there. I love your take on this. Thank you so
Thank you.
much for sharing.
Sure.
You.
Yeah.
Yeah. And apart from the books we've mentioned so far, do you have any other works you've authored or say currently working on?
I do. I do. Well, I have a curriculum that I wrote for teachers
Oh,
or
wow.
educators, and it's a whole curriculum. It has puppy mind in it. There's some art activities, um, and games and
Wow.
stories and meditations. And so that's almost a 300-page curriculum that I love called Mindful Arts in the Classroom. And then my last book that just came out is a really sweet book about a little dolphin who's afraid of the deep water. It's called Dolly Dives Deep.
Oh,
And
wow.
yeah, it's super sweet. I'll show you a couple pages. Just really kind of pretty, almost
Wow.
watercolor
This
like
is very
pages.
beautiful.
Yeah. And it's this little dolphin who just doesn't feel comfortable going into the deep end
Oh, wow.
and the deep water. And I like the metaphor of it, that a lot of us are would prefer to just keep things very surface and not try too hard and not take risks. And it's
Mhm.
all about her, again, noticing where fear shows up in her body,
Yeah.
taking those deep breaths and moving through the fear, so she can kind of do her best and just have a more adventuresome life. Sometimes I feel like we kind of box ourselves in and don't really trust that we can do great things.
Wow. I
Yeah.
love your description of these books. I love it quite so much. And it sounds to me like you've got a lot ongoing. I hope you find some times to sleep.
Oh, I do. I do. Yeah, I do. I actually am really good about, pacing myself. And if the energy isn't there, I don't do it. If
Mhm.
it's of course I have a job, and I teach 300 kids every week. So
Wow.
of course I show up for that. But like the creative stuff, you
Yeah.
know, i- if it's not there energetically, like I always think, if my hands aren't kind of twitching or tingling, then it doesn't feel right. Like if someone says, "Hey, you should try to do this or that,"
Yeah.
and I don't feel anything in my body, I just say, "No, that's not really my thing." But if someone says, "Oh, you should try that," and I get all energized, I think, okay, yeah, that's a good idea. I'm going to do it.
Yeah. Interesting. Thank you for sharing. I'd like to
Yeah.
get a divination of this mindfulness. How did you come
Yeah.
to mindfulness? And have you seen changes in your student for the better so far?
I love that. Yes. 100%.
Wow.
Uh, I started my mindfulness journey probably about 12, 13 years ago. And I went to a workshop, and
Mm.
they were doing all these mindfulness activities. And they were very much like the theater games that I learned in at university.
Yeah.
Um, I have a theater background, and I realized that theater training and mindfulness training are very similar. If you've ever done a performance, whether it's dance or acting or singing, um, you're really not thinking about anything else. You're thinking about your performance, your
Mm.
emotions, perhaps if you're acting. You're thinking about the other people around you. If you're singing, you're listening. If you're dancing, you're watching everyone's feet work. You're not thinking about what's for dinner or if your friend is sick or whatever it is, or your dog is sick or you have laundry to do when you get home or whatever. You're just right there right now. And I just really saw that there was a parallel because that's what you're doing with mindfulness.
Yeah.
You're you're just trying to come back to the moment again and again
Mm.
and notice how your body's doing, how your heart's doing, and how your mind's doing.
Mm.
And if it's in the past or the future, it's probably not, you're not showing up in the way you want to show up, or I'm not showing up in the way I want to show up. So yeah, so that's what really kind of got me excited, was that I have felt like I had been training as a mindfulness teacher for years, and I didn't even know it.
Wow.
Um, and so I really connected with it immediately and started taking all these classes. And then eventually I reached out to a friend of mine who worked in the school district, pairing up artists with classroom teachers.
Mm.
And she opened it up and said, well, I have a friend who is teaching sort of a mindful arts program. Is anyone interested? And I got two kindergarten teachers. So I was teaching, 4 and 5 year olds, the
Wow.
principles of mindfulness. And
Wow.
that's how it started. So yeah. And again, I said it earlier, but and that definition for me
Yeah.
that I like to give to kids is mindfulness is the practice of using our breath to focus our minds and our bodies to make smarter choices. And I
Wow.
just think that's helpful, right? Like if you're an adult and you know about mindfulness, they say that mindfulness is present moment awareness.
Mm.
And I
Listen.
think that's just hard. To me, that's just a harder concept to wrap my head around.
Mm.
Like, aren't we always present? But of course, we're not. But, if you're talking to a 4 year old or a 5 year old, if I say, take a breath to check in with your mind and your body, they can do that. I can say, okay, does your body feel hot or cold? Kind of do that whole
Yeah.
body check in, and so they can do that. But if I say, all right, make sure you're present, make sure you're being present, that makes no sense to them. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
um, it's just too big of a concept. They don't even know what tomorrow is. Like if you
Yeah.
said, what are you doing tomorrow? They might tell you what they're doing next month. They don't really know what that word is in their brains.
Wow.
They know the word, but they don't know exactly what it means.
Wow.
So, yeah.
I love your take on this, and I love the fact that you mentioned, present moment awareness. Your definition of mindfulness to me sounds a bit philosophical. Quite beautiful,
Mm.
really. I love your take on that.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Terrific.
And I can go
Great.
on and on and on and on.
Well, I don't mind compliments, so that's great.
Thank you so much. Yeah. Now let's talk a bit about challenges with terms of publication. Yeah. I'd like
Yeah.
you to tell us a bit if there's any challenges you've encountered in the process of writing your books, and also ever since it got published. What's publishing like for a published author like yourself,
Yeah.
especially
You
something
know,
writing in the children's, genre as well. Yeah.
Sure. In the beginning, it was actually, I have to say, it was pretty easy. There seemed to be a need, and I was filling that need. Um, and now there's a lot of interest in mindfulness, especially in the United States and in England and other English speaking countries.
Yeah.
And and I think now they're really inundated with a lot of authors saying, "Oh, I have one, I have one." Everyone's raising their hand to get into the mix, and so to me, it's harder now. Um,
Mm.
my publishers, even though my books have all done well, they're, I think, looking at um, different voices, and I'm really thrilled at that. I think they're wanting more women writers, more people of color, to have a place at the table, and I'm thrilled. So that, I would say, is the challenge right now, is there's just a lot of voices that want to be heard, and I like that idea of kind of me sort of stepping back and letting other
Yeah.
people speak. Um, and because there's such value there. And I also think self-publishing is something to consider for any author,
Yeah.
because the margins are better. Usually, if you're
Absolutely.
smart about it, you can get paid more um, per book self-publishing. The problem is, in theory,
Mm,
the publisher is helping you promote your book more.
mm,
But it's not always the case. Sometimes um, they're very careful about how much money they spend
mm,
on on um, on their authors. Like, I'm not famous. A lot of times, uh, movie stars in the United States will publish books, especially children's books,
mm.
and they get a lot of press. They get to go on all the big talk shows and
Yeah.
that sort of thing. But I've done a couple of small talk shows here in San Francisco, but I've never done a national talk show, because I'm not a famous, actor or whatever.
A
So, oh
politician.
well. Or a politician. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. If you've
Yeah.
got a name, that opens doors for sure.
Absolutely. Oh, wow. Thank you
Yeah.
so much. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'd like to ask your advice too in here. As a published
Okay.
author, what sort of advice do you have for other writers who are still struggling with publishing
Right.
a book? And where exactly can interested viewers get a copy of your books?
Yeah. Okay. Um, I would say, great works are not written, they're rewritten.
Yeah.
You
Wow.
you can't write something perfect right off out of the box. You have to out of the gate. You have to, keep finessing it. You have to show it to, trusted friends,
Yeah.
maybe people in the industry. Maybe if you can find an agent, try to find an agent. I don't have an agent. I'm actually in the process of knocking on
Yeah.
some doors. I don't know how successful I'll be, but can't can't win if you don't play.
Yeah.
So
You have to try, you know.
you do have to try. So that's some of the challenges. I'm blanking on the question though. What was your initial
Yeah. The
question?
other one is where can interested viewers get a copy of your book?
Oh, right. Absolutely. So, you can get any of my books on Amazon, in the United States. I don't know about Africa. Do you guys have
Yeah, we have
Amazon?
Amazon actually here.
So it should be there. It
Yeah.
should be there. It'd probably take a while to get to you,
It's
but
I got most of my books from Amazon, you know.
oh, good. Okay, great. Well, yeah, my guess is it's on your Amazon as well. I know
Yeah,
Amazon UK is tricky,
yeah, it's
so.
actually shipped from Amazon US, yeah.
Oh, perfect. Oh, great. Yeah, so you can get any of my books there, and then there's other sources as well. Um, like the Walmarts of the world carry my
Mm,
books, at Target, and I don't know if you have those things there, but yeah, it's those big box stores,
yeah,
like Costco. I don't know if these names mean anything to you or your listeners, um, but yeah, Amazon is the short answer.
that's amazing. That's a great advice, first of all, that you've got in there. I'm hoping that viewers, even including myself, would love to utilize it. And I also left a
Yeah,
link in the description part of this interview where interested viewers can get a copy of Andrew J. Nance's books directly on Amazon and Barnes& and Nobles on his website and also another platform. I also left links to his social media pages for possible followings. So thank you so much, Andrew, for accepting the invitation to be featured on P English Literature. I must say it's more than awesome, quite great, quite exciting, very amazing, illustrative, beautiful, awesome, and educative as well. Having this conversation with you around your titles. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, it's my pleasure as well.